Hello everyone, thank you so much for your kind comments on my previous video, welcoming me back and encouraging and inspiring me to keep crocheting and sharing my projects with you. I have a very wide audience on my channel. Some people watch it for the tutorials only, others like listening to my crochet related stories. Some people just like to follow my crochet business journey and cheer for me along the way, and some of my viewers are on a crochet business journey themselves. Today's video is for this last category of my viewers. I just reached 30,000 sales on Etsy, and I thought sharing my experience might be helpful to others. Maybe you've been thinking of starting an Etsy shop yourself, or just wondered what it's like to be an Etsy seller. Of course, everyone's Etsy selling journey is going to be different and unique. There is no magic formula or blueprint on how to become a successful seller. There are so many variables involved, and I could talk about them for hours. But in this video, I'm going to keep it short and share only 3 main points, or pieces of advice if you wish, which played a huge role in the growth and success of my Etsy shop, and which new and aspiring Etsy sellers should keep in mind. Those 30,000 sales might sound impressive at first glance, but let me tell you that they did not happen overnight. They did not happen over a year, not even 2 years, not even 5, but 10. 10 years. It took me 10 years to make 30,000 sales on Etsy. And again, I'm bringing it up to your attention to emphasize my point that there is no magical formula or blueprint for instant success. And if someone tells you there is, and if someone claims to know that secret, and if that someone wants to sell it to you, don't believe them. Let me go back a little. Or actually not that little. Let me go back more than a decade ago and tell you a bit about how I started my Etsy store in the first place. Back then I was married, I had 2 very young children, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I loved it all. That was a very happy time of my life. I enjoyed taking care of my family, cooking and baking, cleaning and gardening, decorating for the holidays, and I also enjoyed doing crafts, especially crochet. I had a blog named Lazy Crochet. Yes, I know, not a very original name, on which I loved sharing my crochet projects. People liked them and encouraged me to start selling them. So I opened my Etsy shop and listed my finished crochet items for sale. I did make a few sales, but pretty soon I realized that it's just not going to work. My shop failed miserably. Even now, many people on my channel suggest I start selling the finished items, but I don't think I ever will. You see, I already tried it in the past, and it didn't work for me. So in this video, I'm sharing my experience selling crochet patterns exclusively. I can't really give you any advice on selling finished items, because I myself never succeeded at that. Back to my story. I opened an Etsy shop. It flopped, and I deleted the listings, but my empty shop still remained there. Writing my blog, I realized the majority of my readers were interested in my crochet projects from the point of how I crocheted them, what yarns and hook sizes I used, which makes sense. The people who were interested in my blog were crocheters who wanted to crochet the same or similar things themselves rather than purchasing the finished crochet items. So many people started asking me how I crocheted this or how I crocheted that, which stitch did I use, which hook size, etc. However, at that point, all that I knew about crochet, I knew it in my native language, not in English. But being encouraged and motivated by all those comments and questions, I began to learn the crochet terminology in English, and I began making my first attempts at writing crochet patterns, which I posted on my blog. And once I started doing that, my blog began to grow in popularity. It was incredible. Remember, we are talking about the time more than a decade ago. Back then, there weren't that many online resources about crochet, and it was mostly my lacy baby blanket that brought readers to my blog. People really liked them, and people loved that I shared my patterns for free. Some people even began to encourage me to start selling them, but I wasn't interested in that. On one hand, I still didn't feel confident enough in regards to my pattern writing skills. I didn't feel confident charging people for them. On the other hand, I didn't really have the financial necessity to do so. I was married, my then husband provided for our family. We were not rich, but we weren't financially struggling either. I simply loved having my blog, sharing my crochet projects and my crochet patterns. It was a lovely hobby and it was a wonderful way to connect with other crocheters. And then something happened. It seems like in life there is always something that happens and forces things to go in a different direction. And sometimes it can even be a blessing in disguise, as it was in this case for me. The readers of my blog started reaching out to me or commenting on my posts and saying they've seen my patterns, the ones I created myself, the pictures I took myself, being sold on eBay and Etsy. So what happened was, people would copy and paste the free patterns from my blog, take the pictures, crop off the name of my blog, which I always put at the bottom or at the top of the photo, create a PDF file and sell it. I was upset. I was really upset. Not only that was my work, which I was sharing with the rest of the world for free, but those were pictures with my children's items. In my crochet photography, I often used my children's teddy bears and other toys and little items as props. I was hurt. It felt like a personal insult. I almost deleted my blog. It was my then husband who talked me out of it. I should give him credit for that. He said, just wait. You can always delete it tomorrow. Just wait for a couple of weeks. Then you'll decide what to do. So I followed his advice. I calmed down and 2 weeks later I told myself, if other people believe that my patterns are good enough to be sold, I should believe that too. So I went back to that empty Etsy shop of mine and I started listing my new patterns for sale while advertising them on my blog. That was the year 2014. Another thing I started doing is plastering my name on all of the photos. Sometimes you might see it right in the middle of the photo and perhaps you wondered, why did she have to put it there? Well, now you know why, so that people cannot crop it off. And even if people repost my crochet pictures on other sites, which they do quite a lot, they can't remove that Olga Poltava sign from the photo. So that's how I started selling patterns on Etsy. It really was a blessing in disguise. Back then, I didn't have the financial necessity to sell my patterns, but I'm glad I started selling them because years later, when things in my life changed, and that's another thing about life, it's unpredictable. You can never know or be sure of what turn your life will take. That Etsy shop of mine became a valuable source of income for me. It wasn't a significant source of income, but it was some income. It was better than having nothing. So that's my story. Now let me share with you those 3 important points I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Number 1. Once you open your Etsy shop, you need to bring traffic to it yourself. To this day, the majority of the traffic to my shop comes from my YouTube channel and my old crochet blog. But this is especially important when you just start your shop. You cannot expect Etsy promoting your shop and bringing sales to it. In the future, once your shop is established, to some degree they will. But when your shop is brand new, it's completely on you. You really need to make those first sales happen, because without them, nobody will ever find your shop on Etsy. Once you start making sales, little by little, your shop will go higher in the search, and the more sales you make, the more visible Etsy will make it to the potential customers. In my case, I started making those first sales because I announced on my blog that I started selling my patterns and I started actively advertising them on my own blog. I already had some established crochet following, so I began to make sales right away. If you too have some following already, it's going to be much easier for you to get those first sales. If you don't, it's going to be harder. Etsy does not allow sellers to purchase their own items in order to give a boost to their own shops. So you will have to come up with ideas of how you can promote your shop and reach potential buyers on your own. Number 2, you need to increase the amount of listings in your shop. As I said, once I started listing my patterns for sale on Etsy, I began to make sales right away, thanks to the following I had on my crochet blog. But I didn't make a lot of sales, and I didn't make them that often. It takes time to create a design, to crochet the item, to take good photos, to put everything together in a cohesive pattern. I was only able to add 1 or 2, at most 3 new patterns a month, so the amount of listings, the choices, remained limited for quite a while. For a very long time I was making very little from the sale of my patterns, and it's only once I reached 100 pattern listings in my shop I began to see a significant shift. Only then the sales became more regular and the amount of money became not really sufficient or adequate, but it finally began to feel that my work started to pay off. It took about 3.5 years for me to get to that point, because you simply cannot create 100 crochet patterns in a month or in several months, probably not even in a year. And again, it makes sense. The more options you have in your shop, the more likely it is that a potential customer who landed on your page for the first time will see something they like and will purchase it. And it also increases the chances of getting a returning customer. If someone purchased your pattern and liked it and they want to purchase something else, the more options you have for them, the more likely they will make that second purchase. So just keep that 100 listings milestone in mind and don't give up too soon. Number 3, reviews are super important. Just as I started seeing a visible shift in my sales once I got over 100 listings in my shop, I noticed another evident shift once I got 1,000 reviews. I believe reviews play a huge role in the success of your shop. It's an indicator of how established your shop is and how reliable your shop is. When someone purchases a pattern from a designer they don't know and a shop they've never purchased from before, it's like a gamble for them. The pattern might turn out to be very good, easy to understand, easy to follow, or it might turn out to be very bad. And since PDF downloads on Etsy are not refundable and not exchangeable, it really is a gamble. So the reviews in your shop will greatly help new customers to have that confidence that they need in order to purchase your pattern. It took me a very long time to get to 1,000 reviews. It took me a very long time even to get to 100 reviews. I remember I was reaching out to people who purchased my patterns and telling them how much I would appreciate it if they could leave a review of their purchase. So yes, reviews are super important. And once you reach that 1,000 mark, you'll start seeing a significant shift. I hope this information was useful. So let's sum up. Once you open your shop, you need to start bringing traffic to it right away. 100 listings and 1,000 reviews will be crucial milestones for your shop. Okay friends, so if you want to give it a try and open your own Etsy shop, you can get 40 listings for free, otherwise Etsy charges 20 cents per listing. If you open your shop through my Etsy invitation, I will post the link in the description box below. Thank you so much, and until the next video.